The meeting room on Space Station Gamma was quiet, except for the soft hum of air recyclers. Captain Sarah Chun stared at the massive display screen showing star charts that stretched across the galaxy. Red zones marked dangerous areas where no ships were allowed to go. There were 17 of these forbidden sectors, and they looked like giant scars across the map. These red areas have been marked as death zones for over 3,000 years, said Zektar, the blue-skinned alien who served as humanity's first galactic liaison officer. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he pointed at the screen with one of his 6 arms. No intelligent species goes there anymore. Too many ships have been lost. Sarah leaned forward in her chair. She was a small woman with short brown hair and curious green eyes that seemed to light up whenever she encountered something new. What exactly is in these zones that makes them so dangerous? Zektar made a clicking sound that meant he was uncomfortable. Many things. In the Maelstrom Nebula, there are storms made of living energy that hunt spaceships. They can think and plan attacks. Over 200 vessels have been destroyed there in recorded history. He moved his pointer to another red zone. The Devourer sector contains planets that eat other planets. Ships that go too close simply vanish. Some say the worlds themselves are alive and hungry. Sarah's eyes grew brighter. Fascinating. What else? The Maze of Sorrows has gravity fields that change without warning. Space itself twists and turns like a puzzle. Ships enter but never find their way out. Time moves differently there. Some explorers have been lost for decades but think only. Hours have passed. The alien continued, pointing to different red zones. Then there are the ghost worlds where the laws of physics work differently. Metal becomes liquid, energy turns solid, and mathematics itself breaks down. The Council of Sciences has declared these places impossible to understand. Sarah stood up and walked closer to the screen. Her crew watched her carefully. They had served under Captain Chun for 3 years and knew that look on her face. It meant she was planning something that would probably terrify other species. And this area here? She asked, pointing to a particularly large red zone near the galaxies. Edge. The ancient graveyard, Zektar whispered. Old defense systems left behind by a dead civilization. Automated weapons that still work after millions of years. They attack anything that comes near. The technology is so advanced that our best scientists cannot understand how it works. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, Sarah's second-in-command, cleared his throat. Captain, I can see that expression on your face. Please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. Sarah turned around with a grin. Marcus, look at this map. Really look at it. What do you see? Marcus studied the display. I see a lot of red zones that have killed thousands of beings over thousands of years. I see opportunity, Sarah said. She walked to her personal tablet and began pulling up additional data. Computer, show me resource surveys for the forbidden sectors. The screen changed to show mineral deposits, energy sources, and rare materials. The red zones lit up like treasure maps. Sarah's grin grew wider. Look at this. The Maelstrom Nebula sits on top of the largest deposit of quantum crystals in the galaxy. These crystals are needed for faster-than-light communication. Right now, the galaxy pays enormous prices for tiny amounts from other sources. She pointed to another area. The Devourer sector has 3 stable wormholes that could cut travel time between the outer rim and core worlds by 70%. Ships currently take months to make that journey. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's chief scientist, joined the discussion. The ghost worlds could teach us about alternative physics. Imagine what we could learn about the universe if we studied places where normal rules don't apply. Zektar made loud clicking sounds that indicated extreme distress. You cannot be serious about entering these zones. Humans, I know your species is known for being adventurous, but this is suicide. The Galactic Council has strict laws against attempting to enter forbidden sectors. Sarah sat back down and looked directly at the alien liaison. Zektar, how many species are in the Galactic Council? 437 intelligent species are current members. And how many of those species have tried to solve the problems in these red zones instead of just avoiding them? Zektar's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. None. The dangers are too great. The smart approach is to mark these areas as no-entry zones and find safer routes. But that's just it, Sarah said, standing up again. Everyone just accepts that these places are impossible. No one has tried to understand them or find ways to work with whatever is causing the problems. Commander Webb shook his head. Sarah, I've been with you through some crazy missions, but this is different. We're talking about places that have been killing people for millennia, which means no one has figured out the right approach yet. Dr. Vasquez added, her excitement matching the captain's. Every species that has tried has used the same methods. Maybe humans can think of something different. Sarah pulled up Earth's exploration history on the screen. Images of ancient ships sailing into unknown oceans, astronauts landing on the moon, and the first human colonies on Mars appeared. Throughout our history, humans have had a simple philosophy about places marked. Do not enter. We see them as challenges, not barriers. Other species look at these forbidden zones and see death. We look at them and see puzzles waiting to be solved. Zektar stood up on his multiple legs. Captain Chun, I must strongly advise against this course of action. I will need to report any such plans to the Galactic Council immediately. Sarah nodded. I understand your position, Zektar. But I'm not asking for permission. I'm informing you of our intentions. She turned to her crew. I want full surveys of all 17 forbidden sectors. Look for patterns, weaknesses, anything that might give us an edge. And if the Council tries to stop us? Marcus asked. Sarah's grin became almost predatory. Then they'll learn something new about human stubbornness. 3 months after the meeting with Zektar, Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Curiosity as it approached the edge of the Maelstrom Nebula. The view screen showed swirling clouds of energy that moved like living creatures. Purple and gold lightning danced between the gas formations, and occasionally, shapes that looked almost like faces appeared in the storms. All stations report ready, Captain. Commander Webb announced from his position. Engineering says the rotating electromagnetic shields are working perfectly. Dr. Vasquez has communication equipment prepared. Sarah nodded. Good, remember. Everyone, we're not here to fight these energy storms. We're here to figure out what they want. Behind them, Lieutenant Tom Rodriguez monitored incoming messages from Earth Command. Captain, we're getting another urgent communication from the Galactic Council. They're demanding we turn back immediately. File it with the others, Sarah said calmly. How many warnings are we up to now? 47 official protests, 12 threats of economic sanctions, and 3 promises to send military ships to stop us. Rodriguez replied. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her science station. The energy patterns are definitely not random. I'm seeing repeated sequences that look like attempts at communication. These storms are trying to tell us something. The ship shook gently as they entered the outer edge of the nebula. On the view screen, tendrils of living energy reached toward them, but the rotating shields deflected the contact harmlessly. It's working, Chief Engineer Park called from the engine room. The storms can't maintain contact long enough to drain our power systems. The rotation is too fast for them to adapt. Suddenly, the largest storm formation moved directly in front of their ship. Instead of attacking, it simply floated there, pulsing with soft blue light. It's not aggressive, Dr. Vasquez said with excitement. Look at the energy signature. This is curiosity, not hostility. Sarah made a decision that would have terrified any other species in the galaxy. Cut engines. Let it approach. Captain, are you sure about this? Webb asked, his hand hovering over the emergency controls. Trust me, Marcus. Sometimes the best Way to make friends is to show you're not afraid. The energy storm drifted closer to their ship. Tendrils of lightning touched the hull gently, almost like fingers exploring something new. Dr. Vasquez's equipment went wild with readings. "I'm getting structured patterns," she announced. "This isn't random energy discharge. It's language. A very complex language made of electrical impulses." "Can you translate it?" Sarah asked. "Give me a few minutes." "The computer is analyzing the patterns now." Dr. Vasquez worked frantically at her station. "Got it. Basic concepts are coming through." "Wait. This is incredible. What is it saying?" Sarah leaned forward. "It's asking us questions. What are you? Why do you not run? Are you like the others who fear us?" Sarah smiled. "Can you send a response?" "I think so. The communication array can mimic their electrical patterns. Tell them we're humans and we're here to talk, not to fight." Dr. Vasquez sent the translated message. The storm pulsed brightly, and suddenly dozens of other energy beings appeared around their ship. The entire nebula seemed to come alive with excited electrical chatter. "They're calling to others," Dr. Vasquez translated quickly. "They're saying the small metal creatures want to talk. They are not afraid. Come see." Commander Webb shook his head in amazement. "In 3,000 years of galactic exploration, we're the first ones to try talking to them instead of shooting at them." Over the following hours, Sarah and her crew learned the truth about the Maelstrom Nebula. The energy storms were indeed intelligent beings, but they were not hunters. They were lonely. For thousands of years, ships had entered their home, and every single one had either attacked them or tried to run away. The storms had defended themselves, which led to their reputation as killers. They've been trying to communicate with visitors for centuries, Dr. Vasquez explained. But every species interpreted their approach as an attack. When the storms reached out to touch ships, the crews thought they were being drained of power and fought back. So they became more aggressive. In response, Sarah concluded, a classic misunderstanding that escalated over time. The largest storm, who called itself Bright Singer of the Deep Current, explained through electrical pulses that his people had much knowledge to share. They had watched the galaxy for millennia and had learned many secrets about energy manipulation and space travel. Meanwhile, reports came in from other human exploration teams. Captain James Mitchell had made contact with the quantum beings in the probability sectors. These creatures existed in multiple dimensions at once and had been labeled as pirates because they seemed to make ships disappear randomly. In reality, they were protecting rare spatial phenomena from damage. Captain Lisa Park reported success in the ancient graveyard. The automated defense systems had not responded to her ship at all. When she sent the right mathematical sequences, the ancient machines recognized her crew as potential inheritors of the old knowledge rather than threats to be destroyed. "How are you doing this?" Zektar asked during the video call from Space Station Gamma. "My people have been monitoring your progress, and it makes no sense. These forbidden zones have killed thousands of explorers." Sarah was sitting in her captain's quarters, looking out at the peaceful energy beings floating around her ship. "Zektar, I think the problem is in the approach. Every species that has entered these zones has gone in expecting to fight or to run. We went in expecting to learn." "But the dangers are real," Zektar insisted. "Ships have been destroyed." "Yes, but only because they treated everything they encountered as an enemy. We treated everything as a potential friend." 2 days later, the Curiosity emerged from the Maelstrom Nebula with a complete map of safe passages and a communication protocol for talking with the energy beings. Behind them, Bright Singer of the Deep Current and several other storms followed as escorts. "The path is clear," Dr. Vasquez announced. "The storms have agreed to guide other ships through the nebula in exchange for regular communication with the outside galaxy. They're excited to finally have friends to talk to." Sarah opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Captain Chun. Reporting successful first contact with the Maelstrom entities. The nebula is now safe for travel with proper protocols. Estimated travel time through the sector is reduced by 60% compared to going around it. The response from Earth was immediate. Excellent work, Captain. How soon can you begin escort services for commercial shipping? Give us a week to train the storm beings in standard galactic communication protocols. They're very eager to help. Commander Webb joined Sarah at the observation deck as they watched the energy storms dancing in formation around their ship. You know the Galactic Council is going to have a collective nervous breakdown when they hear about this. Sarah laughed. Let them. We've just opened up the first forbidden sector in galactic history. Imagine what we'll find in the other 16. The other ships are reporting similar success, Webb said, checking his tablet. It looks like humans have a talent for making friends with things that terrify everyone else. That's because we're too curious to be properly afraid, Sarah replied. And sometimes that's exactly what the universe needs. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in her environmental suit just outside the research station Harmony as she watched the massive planet below her pulse with gentle bioluminescent light. The world called Grandmother Who Dreams was the size of Jupiter but had the consciousness of a living being. For 6 months, Elena had been learning to communicate with what other species called a planet eater. Elena, are you getting the deep resonance patterns? Asked Dr. Sarah Kim over the communication system. Sarah was stationed on the planet's surface inside a protective biodome, surrounded by what looked like neural pathways made of crystal and organic matter. Yes, the translations are coming through clearly now, Elena replied, adjusting her equipment. Grandmother is explaining about the temporal anomaly at her core. She's been trying to warn ships away from it for 10,000 years. The breakthrough had come when Elena realized that the planet wasn't trying to eat spaceships. Instead, Grandmother Who Dreams was a massive organism that had grown around a dangerous time distortion. When ships approached too closely, she would reach out with tentacles of living matter to push them away. But frightened crews interpreted this as an attack and fired weapons, which forced Grandmother to defend herself. The anomaly is growing stronger, Elena translated as deep vibrations traveled through the planet's bio-neural network. Grandmother says if it's not stabilized soon, it could tear a hole in spacetime that would affect the entire sector. Back on the research station, Commander Jiang Wei reviewed the data they had collected. According to our scans, the temporal distortion has been contained inside the planet's core for millions of years. Grandmother has been acting as a living prison, keeping this thing from destroying everything around it. Elena felt a wave of emotion from the planet being below her. Loneliness, sadness, and a deep tiredness that came from eons of isolation and misunderstanding. She's been alone all this time, Elena said softly. Imagine being the only one of your kind, trying to protect everyone, and having them fear you. For it, the communication network crackled as more messages came in from other human exploration teams across the galaxy. Captain Chun's voice was excited as she reported from the Maze of Sorrows. We've made contact with the gravity maze generators. They're not natural phenomena at all. They're ancient SI systems called the Conservators, and they've been protecting rare spatial formations from damage. The mazes aren't meant to trap ships. They're meant to guide them away from delicate areas. Another voice joined the communication. Captain Mitchell was speaking from the probability sectors. The quantum beings have agreed to teach us their dimensional manipulation techniques. They call themselves the Between Walkers, and they've been protecting reality intersections where multiple universes touch. They thought we were trying to break their protective barriers. Dr. Kim's voice came through clearly from the planet's surface. Grandmother wants to know if the other Guardians are finally being understood too. She's been aware of them all along. They're all part of some kind of ancient protection network. Elena processed this information quickly. You mean all these forbidden sectors are connected? They're all protecting something. That's what it looks like, Commander Jang confirmed. We're getting similar reports from teams in 12 different sectors. Every monster and impossible phenomenon we've encountered has turned out to be a guardian or protector of some kind. As if responding to their conversation, Grandmother Who Dreams sent a complex series of vibrations that took Alina several minutes to translate. She says the galaxy was once threatened by something called the Devourers of Light. These were beings that consumed energy, matter, and even time itself. The ancient civilizations created a network of guardians to protect important areas after the threat was defeated. But the guardians have been active for millions of years, Dr. Kim pointed out. Why are they still protecting these areas? Elena relayed the question to Grandmother, who responded with what could only be described as worry. She says the Devourers were not destroyed, only sleeping. The Guardians must remain active because the threat could return. But over time, the knowledge of their purpose was lost. New species arose and saw only dangerous creatures in places they should not go. Commander Jang looked at his tactical displays. If that's true, then humanity has just made friends with the galaxy's oldest and most powerful defense network. The implications were staggering. Elena looked down at the massive planet being below her and felt a profound connection. Grandmother Who Dreams had been alone for so long, misunderstood and feared by every species that encountered her. Now, for the first time in millennia, someone was listening to her story. Elena, we're getting an urgent message from the other teams, Commander Jang announced. Something's happening in the outer rim sectors. Elena's equipment suddenly filled with panicked vibrations from Grandmother Who Dreams. The planet's bioluminescent patterns shifted from gentle blues and greens to urgent reds and oranges. What is she saying? Dr. Kim asked from the surface. Elena felt her blood run cold as she translated. She says the deep sensors are detecting movement in the void between galaxies. Something vast and hungry is stirring. The Guardians are all responding to an alert signal they haven't used in 4 million years. The communication network exploded, with reports from human teams across the galaxy. The energy storms in the Maelstrom Nebula were forming massive defensive formations. The quantum beings were reinforcing reality barriers. The ancient AI systems were activating weapon systems that had been dormant for geological ages. Captain Chun, this is Elena. We need an emergency meeting of all human expedition leaders. I think we've stumbled into something much bigger than we realized. Captain Chun's voice was tense when she replied. Already on it, Elena. We're detecting strange readings in deep space. Whatever these Guardians have been protecting the galaxy from, it might be waking up. Elena looked down at Grandmother Who Dreams, whose massive form was now pulsing with urgent energy patterns. The planet being was afraid, and if something could frighten a creature that had guarded the galaxy for millions of years, humanity needed to take it very seriously. Grandmother is asking if we will stand with the Guardians when the time comes. Elena translated. She says humans are the first species in her memory that chose understanding over fear. The Guardians want to know if we will help them protect the galaxy. Dr. Kim's voice was steady despite the enormous implications. Tell her that humans have never backed down from protecting those who can't protect themselves. If the Guardians need allies, they have them. Elena transmitted the message to Grandmother Who Dreams, who responded with a wave of gratitude and relief that was felt throughout the entire star system. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient Guardians of the galaxy were not alone, but in the dark spaces between galaxies, something ancient and hungry was beginning to stir, drawn by the energy signatures of a galaxy that had grown rich and full during its long sleep. The real test of the Human Guardian Alliance was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 6 hours, and the tension in the Great Chamber was thick enough to cut with a knife. Representatives from 437 species sat in their assigned sectors. their voices rising in panic and anger as reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. Ambassador Thylos, of the hegemony of cautious species, stood at the central podium, his three heads speaking in unison. The humans have violated every safety protocol established over 3 millennia. They have awakened ancient guardians and disturbed forces beyond our understanding. Now we face consequences that threaten all civilized life. Zektar sat in the human liaison section, feeling very uncomfortable as hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. He had been trying to defend humanity's actions, but it was becoming more difficult as the reports grew more alarming. The deep space monitoring stations are detecting massive energy signatures moving toward our galaxy, announced Commander Vex of the Unified Defense Fleet. Whatever these things are, they're bigger than anything we've ever seen. Some are the size of solar systems. High Chancellor Mordak, the leader of the Council, raised one of his massive arms for silence. The question before us is simple. Do we order the immediate withdrawal of all human forces from the forbidden sectors, or do we prepare for a war we do not understand? Before anyone could answer, every communication screen in the chamber activated at once. Captain Sarah Chun's face appeared, broadcasting from the bridge of the Curiosity. "Honorable members of the Galactic Council," Sarah said calmly, "I apologize for interrupting your session, but time is running short. We need to talk." "You have no authority to address this council," Ambassador Thylos declared angrily. "Your species has brought disaster upon us all." "Actually, I think we may have found the solution," Sarah replied. "But we need your help to implement it." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Chancellor Mordak gestured for quiet. "Explain yourself, human. The ancient guardians have shared their historical records with us. The threat approaching our galaxy is called the Hunger Fleet. They're beings that consume entire star systems for energy. 4 million years ago, they nearly destroyed all life in this galaxy before being driven into hibernation." Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared beside Sarah on the screen. "The Guardians were created by a coalition of ancient species to maintain defensive barriers while the Hunger Fleet slept. But the plan always required active cooperation from the galaxy's inhabitants." "What kind of cooperation?" Chancellor Mordak asked. "The defensive network needs to be powered by conscious will and unity," Elena explained. "The Guardians can provide the framework, but sentient beings must choose to work together. The ancient species knew that only a truly united galaxy could generate enough psychic energy to repel the Hunger Fleet permanently." Ambassador Thylos made a dismissive sound. "Impossible. Our species are too different to achieve such unity. We have been trying to work together for thousands of years with limited success." "That's exactly why the ancient plan failed the first time," Sarah said. "The Guardians have been waiting for someone to figure out how to bring different species together. We think humans might be the key." Commander Vex leaned forward. "What makes you believe humans are special in this regard?" "Because we've already done it," Sarah replied. "In 6 months, we've made friends with Guardians that other species feared for millennia. We've established working relationships with beings that seemed impossible to communicate with. We don't see differences as barriers to overcome. We see them as resources to utilize." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Zektar found himself nodding as he remembered his first meetings with humans. They had approached him not as an alien to be cautious of, but as a potential friend with valuable knowledge. Suddenly, the chamber's emergency alarms began blaring. Chancellor Mordak A's aide rushed to his side with an urgent message. "The outer rim monitoring stations have gone silent," the aide announced. "Last readings showed massive objects entering our galaxies. Edge. Estimated time to reach inhabited systems is 47 standard days." The panic in the chamber was immediate. Representatives began shouting demands for military mobilization, evacuation plans, and emergency protocols. Sarah's voice cut through. The chaos. Honorable Council members, we have a proposal. The Guardians are willing to share their technology and knowledge with all species, but only if those species are willing to work together under unified command. You're suggesting that humanity should command the galaxy's defense? Ambassador Thylos asked incredulously. We're suggesting that someone needs to coordinate the effort, and we're the only species that has working relationships with all the Guardians, Sarah replied. But we can't do it alone. We need every species to contribute their unique strengths. Elena appeared on screen again. The Crystalline Collective has technology that can amplify psychic connections across vast distances. The Void Swimmers can navigate between dimensions. The machine symbionts can interface directly with ancient computer systems. Every species has something vital to contribute. Chancellor Mordak stood up slowly. What exactly are you proposing? A temporary alliance, Sarah said. 47 days to prove that different species can work together for a common goal. If we succeed in repelling the Hunger Fleet, we'll have shown that galactic unity is possible. If we fail, it won't matter anyway. The chamber was quiet for several long minutes as representatives consulted with their governments. Finally, Chancellor Mordak spoke. The proposal is unprecedented. No single species has ever been granted coordination authority over galactic defense. Then maybe it's time to try something unprecedented, Sarah replied. The old ways haven't worked for 4 million years. The Guardians are tired of waiting alone. Ambassador Thylos stood up reluctantly. If we agree to this madness, what assurances do we have that humans won't abuse this authority? Sarah smiled. Because we're not asking for permanent control. We're asking for the chance to prove that cooperation works better than fear. Once the crisis is over, you can go back to marking things on maps as do not enter if you want. But right now, the galaxy needs someone willing to say welcome to new possibilities. One by one, the species representatives began to signal their agreement. It wasn't unanimous, and many voices expressed serious doubts. But the approaching threat left little choice. Chancellor Mordak called for a formal vote. All in favor of granting temporary coordination authority to the human expeditionary forces? The vote was closer than Sarah had hoped, but it passed. As the session ended, she looked at her crew with a mixture of excitement and terror. Well, Commander Webb said quietly, now we have to actually save the galaxy. No pressure at all. Elena added with a nervous laugh. Sarah turned to look at the stars outside the view screen, where ancient guardians were already moving into position for the coming battle. Somewhere in the dark between galaxies, the Hunger Fleet was approaching, and humanity had just volunteered to stand in its way. Time to show the universe what humans do best, she said quietly. Turn the impossible into the inevitable. The final battle began on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the command deck of the massive coordination station that had been built in just 38 days with help from 200 different species. Through the massive view screen, she could see the Hunger Fleet approaching like a dark tide across the stars. The enemy ships were enormous beyond imagination. Each one was the size of a moon, and there were thousands of them. They moved through space, consuming everything in their path, leaving empty void where star systems had once existed. All Guardian networks report ready, Dr. Elena Vasquez announced from her position at the Psychic Coordination Console. Around her, representatives from dozens of species worked together to maintain the mental links that powered the ancient defense systems. Bright Singer of the Deep Current, the energy storm being, pulsed with confident light as he coordinated with his fellow storm entities. They had formed a massive wall of living lightning that stretched across 3 solar systems. The quantum beings called the Between Walkers had created probability shields that made the Hunger Fleet's targeting systems confused and unreliable. Grandmother Who Dreams reports the temporal barriers are holding, Elena continued. The planet Guardians have synchronized their defensive fields. The ancient AI systems are operating at full power for the first time in 4 million years. Commander Webb monitored the military coordination screens. All species fleets are in position. The Crystalline Collective is amplifying our communication. Networks. The Void Swimmers are providing real-time intelligence from parallel dimensions. Even the most cautious species have sent their best ships. Sarah felt a moment of pride as she watched the display. 6 months ago, these species had been afraid to even talk about the forbidden sectors. Now they were working together in ways that seemed impossible. The Hunger Fleet reached the outer defensive perimeter, and the battle began immediately. The enemy ships fired weapons that turned matter into energy and fed on the destruction they created. But instead of individual species fighting alone, the galaxy responded as one coordinated force. Energy storms are engaging the lead vessels. Elena reported, translating the psychic communications flowing through the network. They're draining the Hunger Fleet's power instead of fighting directly. Brilliant strategy. The ancient Guardians had learned much during their long vigil. They knew that fighting the Hunger Fleet with conventional weapons only fed the enemies strength. Instead, they used techniques that redirected, confused, and exhausted the invaders. The quantum beings created probability traps that made entire sections of the Hunger Fleet exist in multiple realities at once, unable to focus their attacks on any single target. The planet-sized Guardians used their massive gravitational fields to redirect enemy weapons back at their own ships. "It's working," Commander Webb said with amazement. "The Hunger Fleet is slowing down. They can't adapt to coordinated tactics they've never seen before." But the battle was far from over. The largest Hunger ship, something the size of a small star, began powering up a weapon that made space itself scream with tortured energy. "Galaxy killer weapon detected," announced the AI voice of the ancient defense computers. "Estimated power sufficient to destroy multiple star systems simultaneously." Sarah felt the fear ripple through the communication network as hundreds of species realized they were facing extinction. For a moment, the coordination began to waver as panic set in. "Hold the line," Sarah broadcast to the entire galaxy. "This is exactly what the Guardians have been preparing for. Trust the network. Trust each other." Elena's voice was steady as she translated messages from the planet Guardians. "Grandmother who dreams says this is the moment the ancient alliance was created for. All Guardians are focusing their power into a unified shield." What happened next would be remembered in galactic history for millions of years. Every species, every Guardian, every conscious being in the galaxy focused their will on a single purpose: protection of their home. The psychic energy generated by this unified intention powered the Guardian network, beyond anything the ancient creators had imagined possible. A barrier of pure determined will surrounded the galaxy like a shining shell. When the Hunger Fleet's ultimate weapon fired, the blast struck the barrier and simply stopped. The energy that could have destroyed half the galaxy was absorbed, redirected, and sent back at the attackers. The largest Hunger ship shuddered and began to break apart. Its own weapon had been turned against it by the combined will of an entire galaxy working together. "Enemy fleet is retreating," Commander Webb announced as the remaining Hunger ships turned away from the galaxy's edge. "They're moving back toward deep space." But Sarah knew the battle wasn't truly over until the threat was gone permanently. "Elena, ask the Guardians if we can pursue. Can we end this once and for all?" Elena consulted with the ancient beings through the psychic network. "Grandmother who dreams says yes, but it will require every species to maintain the unity we've achieved. The Guardians can create a permanent barrier that will keep the Hunger Fleet in hibernation forever, but only if the galaxy chooses to work together permanently." The communication channels filled with voices from across the galaxy. Species that had never spoken to each other were discussing cooperation. Governments that had been suspicious of their neighbors were making plans for joint ventures. "I think they've made their choice," Sarah said as she watched the coordination displays. The psychic energy readings were stronger than ever, powered not by fear of the enemy, but by hope for what they could accomplish together. The ancient Guardian network activated its final protocol. A barrier of living energy expanded from the galaxy's edge, pushing the Hunger Fleet back into the dark between galaxies and sealing them there permanently. This time, the prison was powered not by the technology of a few ancient species, but by the united will of an entire galaxy. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the same Galactic Council chamber where humanity had first been given coordination, authority, but now the chamber looked completely different. The rigid species segregation was gone, replaced by mixed seating where different beings worked together on shared projects. Chancellor Mordak approached her with what passed for a smile. On his species, Captain Chun, the Council has voted unanimously to establish the new Galactic Charter, the one based on cooperation rather than cautious isolation. Sarah looked at the updated star maps displayed around the chamber. Where red, do not enter, zones had once marked forbidden areas, there were now blue sections labeled cooperative zones. All species welcome. The Guardians have agreed to share their knowledge and technology with all species, Dr. Elena added, joining the conversation. They're finally able to rest, knowing the galaxy can protect itself. Zektar walked over, his 4 eyes bright with excitement. My government wants to establish joint research stations in the former forbidden sectors. They're calling it the greatest opportunity for scientific advancement in galactic history. Sarah smiled as she looked around the chamber at beings from hundreds of worlds working together. You know what the best part is? We didn't save the galaxy by being the strongest or the smartest. We saved it by being willing to make friends with everything everyone else was afraid of. Commander Webb joined the group, carrying a datapad with their new orders. Speaking of making friends, Sarah, you might want to see this. We're getting reports of strange signals from outside our galaxy. 3 different galaxies are asking for help with their own Guardian networks. Sarah's eyes lit up with the familiar excitement that her crew knew meant another impossible adventure was about to begin. Well then, I guess it's time to teach the universe that nowhere is really forbidden when you approach it with the right attitude. She looked out at the stars through the chamber's massive windows, where ships from dozens of species traveled freely through routes that had been closed for millennia. The galaxy had learned that the best way to handle the unknown wasn't to mark it as dangerous and avoid it. The best approach was to say, "Welcome," and see what friendship might accomplish. The maps no longer said, "Do not enter." Now they said, "Come, explore. You might make some amazing friends." And across the galaxy, humanity's greatest gift to the universe continued to spread. The simple idea that curiosity and friendship could overcome any barrier, no matter how impossible it seemed.